Today it's time to continue my long-running series on horror through the decades, and today we're covering the 1990s. The 90s was an interesting time. A lot of people say the genre kind of fell off. It didn't hit the glory of the 1980s. And while that's overall true, there's still a lot of great stuff. So here's my picks for the top 30 best, ranked all the way to my number one. My name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started.
I just want to apologize to Mike's mom and Josh's mom and my mom.
Tell me where you are, John!
Number 30, The Blair Witch Project from 1999. Definitely one of the movies from this decade that most rocked the world. The first found footage movie to really hit it big, to make the subgenre more mainstream. Of course, it's about three film students who go into the woods in search of the Blair Witch, and things do not go well. Now, this is one that I first saw a few years ago because I did not grow up with it. While I was around when it came out, I was not old enough for the phenomenon that was Blair Witch. So I wasn't around for that marketing. I never thought it was real, wasn't terrified in the theater, all that kind of stuff. When I first saw it, just watching it as a movie, didn't think it was very good, thought it was pretty boring. But I wanted to rewatch it for this list, so I did, and to give myself the best chance of enjoying it, I also watched The Curse of the Blair Witch, which is like a 45-minute promotional mockumentary that they made to be like a special feature on the DVD, I guess, or maybe it showed on TV. But it's basically a mockumentary about if the Blair Witch was real and these students that went missing and all that kind of stuff. And it was actually really interesting. It went so deep into the backstory, not necessarily just of the students, but very much of the Blair Witch. There's a lot about the lore of the Blair Witch that's very much touched on lightly in the movie, just kind of skimmed past. And this mockumentary went really deep into all that, and I thought it was kind of fascinating. So rewatching the movie right after that, I got a lot more out of it. Do I still love it? Is it truly one of my favorite horror movies of all time? No, but I do think as a movie about people getting lost in the woods, it is good at getting you to feel the dread of that. It does feel hopeless, just getting lost in the woods with no witch stuff at all. But the witch stuff, there is some creepy things. They did get into some lore that's pretty interesting. While I would have liked more payoff personally, you gotta give respect to the Blair Witch Project. Speaking of witches, my number 29 is The Craft from 1996.
You girls watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
It came out the same year as Scream, and even as some of the same actors like Neve Campbell, and it very much has that Scream-like feel, but instead of putting it on a slasher, it's a witch movie, and it's gotta be one of the most satisfying pure witchcraft films ever made. It actually makes the whole thing really fun as you watch a group of teenage girls who feel like outcasts start to dabble in witchcraft and start to make things happen. And honestly, I find all of that stuff like not scary, just really enjoyable to watch. And it's almost a little bit of a bummer that things go south, and things indeed go south, with one of them even turning into something of an antagonist. Fairuza Balk is really good here. This is just a very enjoyable, kind of cozy, autumnal feeling teen witch movie. It gives me those vibes, and I think it's a lot of fun. Number 28, Bloodlust, Subspecies III from 1994. Full Moon is probably the biggest source of direct-to-video horror from the 90s, and they put out a ton of stuff. But so far from what I've seen, my favorite stuff from Full Moon is the Subspecies movies. And with this original trilogy that are very closely connected, each one just leads into the next, almost like they're 3 episodes of a TV show, I actually think they get better as they go, which is why the third one is my pick for this list. In the first movie, slight spoilers, I guess, a character gets bitten by a vampire. And then in the second movie, it's very much her just trying to come to terms with that, maybe trying to cure herself, avoid this. But the third film is about her starting to embrace her new identity, and her very much coming under the wing of the main vampire of the series, Radu, and learning about the world of vampires, learning how to become a vampire. And I think all that stuff is very interesting and a lot of fun to watch. The Subspecies movies, of any movies I've seen that take place in present day, are some of the best at communicating like really gothic atmosphere. These movies are so gothic, despite not taking place in the past. I really love the feeling of them, the dark castles, and Radu has got to be one of the creepiest vampires I've ever seen. Number 27, Buffy the Vampire Slayer from 1992. Of course, this is the movie that ended up spawning the, I would say, much more successful TV show. The TV show has a massive cult following, more than the movie does, but I am a big fan of the movie. I think it's a really enjoyable horror comedy more than anything else. Here we get Kristy Swanson as Buffy. I think she does a great job. She really well portrays Buffy as a very vapid, self-obsessed, popular cheerleader girl, but communicates that character arc really well. And by the end, I completely believe that she has changed as a person, that she is different. She's become a more selfless hero who protects people from vampires. And I think she's got a pretty great romance with Luke Perry. He's a really good character. But the vampires are very well done here. You got Rutger Hauer as the main vampire, and that dude is just born to play greatest villains ever. So he's awesome here, as well as Paul Rubens as his underling. It's just a straight up satisfying high school comedy that also has vampires, and the vampire action is pretty well done. Number 26, Child's Play 2 from 1990. I'm a huge fan of the Chucky series. I actually think they're mostly pretty darn great movies. And while the first one is hands down my favorite, I think the first one is like perfect, I still really enjoy this second one. It is a terrific sequel that carries forward from the first movie very well, despite the fact that I do miss Catherine Hicks, and I wish her and Andy didn't end up getting split up. I think that's a bummer. I can accept that he has to go to another family, and there he's terrorized by Chucky again. The special effects and the gore are probably, I would say, taken to the next level in the second one. Chucky is in top form. This might be the movie that like really solidifies Chucky's personality. Even though he's really good in the first one, Brad Dourif gets to go all in here, and there's a spectacular third act that anyone who's seen Child's Play 2 knows just how good the finale is. I'm actually a big fan of Child's Play 3 as well. I think it's super underrated, but only keeping one on the list, I do think 2 is the better one. It's darn great. Bad Moon from 1996. Definitely my favorite werewolf movie from this decade, and one of my favorite werewolf films of all time. I think Bad Moon is great. It's got this incredible opening scene about a couple going into a tent together to have a good time, and it ends up being one of the most brutal werewolf attacks I have ever seen on screen. Overall, the gore and the werewolf special effects are incredibly good here. Like, this is one of my favorite visual representations of a werewolf I've ever seen. It looks amazing. There is a transformation scene that uses CGI that's not so good, but this Blu-ray actually has a director's cut on it where they cut that out, so you can actually watch that. But with story, characters, I think it's good about this werewolf going to live with his sister and her son and their dog. The dog is a very important character here, and trying to beat this curse. I really like the tragedy of werewolf stories and him trying to be cured through the love of his family is an interesting idea. And all the characters are great here. It's got beautiful scenery with this house that's like out in the woods, and it's super short. It's only like 79 minutes. It gets in, gets out, and it's a really solid werewolf tale. 24, House on Haunted Hill from 1999. This is the remake of the Vincent Price classic House on Haunted Hill from the 50s, and that's one of my favorite classic horror films of all time. I love House on Haunted Hill, and I do love it more than this remake, but this is still one of my favorite horror remakes. It's great. It does a great job paying homage to the original film, especially with the casting of Geoffrey Rush in the Vincent Price character. He does a very good, almost Vincent Price impersonation, but not quite going there. A little bit of John Waters in there as well, communicating the energy of that character without going into straight up ripoff or parody. And Famke Janssen is also spectacular as his wife who hates him. The bickering of Vincent Price and his wife is one of the best things about the original, and it's really good here. The haunted house atmosphere, while being very different than in the first movie, is very well done. This time it takes place in an old asylum, so you get really good lore around the asylum here too. A lot of other fun characters populating this thing. It's got some legitimately spooky moments. I really think this is one of the most fun haunted house movies you can watch, and it spawned a really enjoyable run of films from Dark Castle Entertainment. They're good stuff. Number 23, Tales from the Hood from 1995. This is one of my favorite horror anthologies, and one that's very much urban set, mostly around black characters. It's got a fantastic wraparound of some criminals who end up going into a funeral home, and the very creepy mortician there proceeds to tell them some scary stories. Almost all of the stories are of really high quality. It's only the last one that I'm not a big fan of, but there's a really good one around a politician and the cops. There's another one with a guy who moves into an old southern plantation. That one's actually my favorite story, with Corbin Burnson and a bunch of creepy dolls. Great, great stuff. Another one about a kid afraid of his stepdad. I think it's his stepdad. All around, it's a terrific cast, and it's just like, there's something about the feeling of 90s horror movies. Like, there's the really prestigious 90s horror, there's a few of those, the direct-to-video stuff, but that middle range that just, I don't know, there's a really comfortable feeling around like a mid-budget 90s horror movie, and this might be one of the top examples I would point to that gets that feeling just right.
I killed my wife. Is that wrong?
Hey, these things happen.
Number 22, Needful Things from 1993. This is a Stephen King adaptation about a dark and mysterious man who moves into a small town and starts a very popular antique store. And it's that classic kind of story where he sells things to the people for a certain price and it grants their greatest wishes. And it turns out to be a devil story. And this is one that I actually came to fairly recently in my life, and I'm so glad I did because I ended up just loving this movie. It's got a terrific cast of people like Ed Harris and Max von Sydow, and I am just a huge fan of the cozy, small New England Stephen King town kind of atmosphere, and this one is one of the greatest examples of that ever captured on screen. Everything about how this movie looks is like, it's just so comfortable to me, and it's a very autumnal movie, leaves blowing in the wind. God, it's just such great stuff. So Needful Things is definitely a comfort watch for me, but it's definitely got some really dark stuff, some real good satanic horror, people doing horrible things to each other in service of this mysterious man. So as a horror movie, it does really deliver. 21, Arachnophobia from 1990. Man, this one is just kind of a classic, isn't it? I love the story of this one, and I love the star. It's starring Jeff Daniels, who's one of my favorite actors, and his family, they move into a small town. It's got more great 90s small town atmosphere, but he discovers he's got a spider problem at his house, and the problem just keeps growing and growing and growing. Now, the first time I saw this film was actually in high school, in a science class. Our science teacher didn't want to teach one day, and he threw on Arachnophobia, and I wouldn't say I'm like terrified of spiders, but I don't like spiders. I don't like to look at them. I don't like to be near them. And this movie like freaked me out watching it among all of my classmates, just like, cringing and covering my eyes like, oh man, the spider stuff is just crazy. This is a PG movie, and it's overall like a pretty wholesome, comfortable feeling kind of horror movie. But if you got a thing with spiders, it's going to give you the heebie-jeebies for sure. Overall, I love watching this. Love Jeff Daniels, love John Goodman as the ridiculous exterminator that comes in. Unless I'm remembering wrong, and I don't think I am, I believe Amblin Entertainment was involved with this one, and I think Steven Spielberg produced it. And it's kind of got that classic Spielberg kind of feel. Love Arachnophobia. Number 20, Cemetery Man from 1994. This actually could take the crown of the weirdest horror movie of the 1990s. Crazy Italian horror film, almost at the end of like Italy's reign as a big producer of horror films. It's directed by Michele Soave, who made a lot of really good films. And this stars Rupert Everett as a cemetery watchman who is tasked with killing the zombies that come out of the grave after a few days of their death. The movie does not try to explain it. It's just something that happens in this graveyard, and he has accepted this as his mission in life. He's a very interesting, complex character who has narration going through the film, but a woman comes in that he very quickly falls in love with, and the movie kind of chronicles her lives, her deaths, his tumultuous relationship with the different versions of her, and with all of the zombies that keep popping up. So like, it's a zombie movie, but if you just go in expecting a zombie movie, it's not really that. It's something that's so incredibly unique. It's almost a bit of a comedy, but if your sense of humor is really, really dark and twisted, and I know some of you guys are out there, so some of you guys are huge fans of this, it's incredibly entertaining, and it's got one of the most bizarre, head-scratching endings I've like ever seen. And as I often say about weird choices in movies, I respect it.
Someone out there is taking all these urban legends and making them reality.
Urban legend.
At 19, Urban Legend from 1998. Now, of course, when Scream came out, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, a lot of movies came out in its wake that were kind of trying to get that success. A lot of people love I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I quite enjoy that movie. It just doesn't quite crack my top 30. Urban Legend is my favorite Scream knockoff. Knockoff I use loosely. You know, it's another slasher movie, but it's got that feel. It is so enjoyable. I remember the first time I watched this movie, I was blown away by how much fun I had with it. There was actually a brief period of my life where I thought I liked it more than Scream. I've gotten over that. It was just the high of seeing it with like bottom of the barrel expectations and finding it's real good. It is real good. It's got a pretty solid snow coat wearing killer going around killing kids at a college campus. I love a college set slasher, and this is one of the top examples I would point to for great college, collegiate, almost dark academia feeling atmosphere in a movie. And I think the cast here is pretty great. Alicia Witt's great in the lead. This is probably Jared Leto's best performance, his least annoying performance he's ever given. Not a big Jared Leto fan, but he's good here. Rebecca Gayheart, Joshua Jackson, Michael Rosenbaum, Robert Englund. Love Robert Englund as a spooky professor in here. Urban Legend is just a deliriously good time. I just throw popcorn in my face and have a blast every time I watch it. Here's another very unique zombie movie. It's Return of the Living Dead 3 from 1993. While it's the third film in this franchise, and the first two films are very closely related, like they're very, very similar movies, kind of to the second one's detriment, this one is really different. It's a very unique film, both on its own, but for this franchise. While the first two definitely have more of a comedic tone, especially that second one, this one is very serious, and it is a tragic love story, and I think one that works spectacularly well, about two young people who are very likable, very much in love, but the girl sadly passes away in an accident, and he finds a way to bring her back from the dead. And it is so gut-wrenching watching her transformation into a full-on brain-eating zombie, a slow transformation that she is trying to hold back through causing pain in order to get her mind off of eating human flesh. Wild stuff. It's directed by Brian Yuzna. It's got some of the coolest gore effects I've ever seen. Really creative, really disgusting, and really well done. Number 17, The Sixth Sense from 1999. The movie that absolutely exploded M. Night Shyamalan's career. And while I was too young to see it at first in 99, I remember my parents did see it, and they really talked it up as being incredibly scary and like one of the greatest horror films ever. And I was both, as a kid, scared to watch it, but like really intrigued. And I always really wanted to see The Sixth Sense. When they eventually let me watch it, I actually wasn't that scared by it. I was pleasantly surprised that I was just able to enjoy it. And I did not have the twists spoiled for me. So yes, I got to experience The Sixth Sense without knowing the ending. I'm always very happy to say that. And if you didn't know The Sixth Sense had a twist, come on, guys. Come on. You should really know that by now. I'm not going to say what it is, though. I will say this movie is lower on the list, maybe than you would expect, because I haven't seen it in years. It's been a long time since I've rewatched it, and I do need to do that, but didn't quite have time before making this list. Only have so much watch time in my daily life. But The Sixth Sense, it's always burned into my brain as a great movie. I've always loved the performances here from Haley Joel Osment and Bruce Willis, and it's just such a fascinating story, and everything about how the ending is orchestrated is insanely well done. Toni Collette also fantastic in this. So Sixth Sense, absolutely one of M. Night Shyamalan's best movies. 16, Phantoms from 1998. A movie that I always heard was absolutely terrible, and then I finally watched it myself and discovered this is not the typical Scream knockoff that it looks like from the poster, but this is a full-on Lovecraftian cosmic god horror movie. And I'm like kind of obsessed with that kind of subgenre. I love those kind of ideas. And Phantoms is actually a very satisfying example of it. Yes, it's got its young, hot 90s cast of people like Rose McGowan, Ben Affleck, Peter O'Toole. Yeah, Peter O'Toole, totally in that category, right? And while I would say Ben Affleck is a little bit miscast. He's not bad in the movie, and overall the cast works very, very well. I do really enjoy getting to see Peter O'Toole here as the expert about this entity who comes in to try to solve it, because our characters have gone into this spooky, almost abandoned town, or perhaps slaughtered town, because of this creature and have to fight their way out. Phantoms, it's kind of awesome. I just love how ambitious it is for a late 90s teen horror movie, and I think it's incredibly entertaining, fun. I just love it. At 15, The People Under the Stairs from 1991. One of my favorite Wes Craven movies. The People Under the Stairs, I think, is like insanely underrated. It's essentially a home invasion movie from the other perspective, where some characters in the city end up breaking into somebody's house to steal stuff and aren't able to get out, and discover that the people who live in there are very weird, very creepy, and are up to some really horrible, horrible things. There might just be some people under the stairs, but no spoilers. I just really enjoy how unique, creative, and wacky this film is. It takes a lot of weird directions, has kind of a crazy tone to it that bounces back and forth a little bit between serious and zany crazy, but overall, I think it works really well. The atmosphere of this house is pretty spooky, and by the end, it's one of those movies that's like very well delivered, some social commentary that very much fits, and you could tell it's something that Wes Craven really cares about, and it's just really well delivered without hitting you on the head too much with it. I think this is actually a very well done movie. Number 14, Tremors from 1990. So here's the thing about Tremors. While it does have fairly low ambitions for what it is, for what it's trying to do, it is absolutely perfect. It is a perfect masterpiece without even one thing even slightly wrong with it. You heard it here first. Citizen Kane, Vertigo, Tremors, perfect movies. Nothing can be altered. Seriously, I love this movie. I love everything about it. I think everyone in the cast is completely perfect. Yes, Michael Gross really does make an impression, but love the two leads of Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon. They are so much fun to watch. Everybody is. The desert vibe of this movie is so well done. It's one of the ultimate hot desert movies ever made. And the Tremors monsters, they look amazing. They are practical effects that have aged perfectly. Everything about them looks awesome. There are so many intense sequences, fun scenes of people just trying to do anything they can, use any kind of human ingenuity to get out of these situations and not get eaten by giant worm creatures. For a giant worm movie, nothing can be fixed about Tremors. Nothing can be improved. It is perfection.
Whatever you're thinking about doing, please don't do it.
It's for the best.
At lucky number 13, Misery from 1990. My pick for the best Stephen King horror movie of the 90s. Although even while I say that, I'm almost regretting a little bit not putting the dark half on here. I really love the dark half, but I'm going to stick with the list. Misery is absolutely awesome. A perfectly executed story about an author who is kind of captured, kind of rescued by a super fan who ends up holding him hostage there so that he can write the perfect version of the ending story she wants. It's actually some really prescient commentary about fan culture and the way, like, it's out of control today with the internet of people just kind of feeling ownership over certain franchises and properties and wanting exactly what they want out of new movies or comic books or whatever, and freaking out when it doesn't deliver exactly what they want. Misery is that movie about that idea. It's directed by Rob Reiner while he was on such a high of just making great movie after great movie. This is another one. It's incredibly intense. It is so interesting. The dialogue is so good. I love the snowy atmosphere, but what people point to the most about this, and they're right to, is the performances. Yes, Kathy Bates is just beyond phenomenal in here as Annie Wilkes. She is so cute, adorable, kind of weird, kind of making you uncomfortable, and then absolutely terrifying throughout the movie. She makes you feel so many different things while always staying true to exactly who this character is. But I've always said, and maybe it's a controversial hot take, my favorite performance in this movie is from James Caan. Man, I think James Caan has got definitely the more subtle work to do, but this movie works so well because you like him, you feel for him, and you really empathize with his absolute desperation to get out of this horrible thing. And you really do connect with how legitimately intelligent he is and how he's just trying so many different ways to get out of this. And that's what makes this film so fun to watch. I love Misery, the movie, not the feeling. Number 12, Stir of Echoes from 1999. This is one that a lot of people might not be thinking of as one of the best horror films of the 90s. In the year it came out, it was really overshadowed by The Sixth Sense. But this is one that ever since I first saw it, I've always really connected with it. It's another Kevin Bacon starring one, and I just love him as this very blue collar kind of guy, a family man who's just trying to make the best out of life, and he's just really relatable as an average dude. And as a party trick, a friend does some kind of hypnotism on him, and it ends up unlocking something in his brain that he can now see ghosts. And it sends him on such an interesting journey of trying to solve a mystery around a ghost in his house. And in a lot of ways, his life kind of falls apart as he cannot focus on anything else but solving this mystery. But his wife is a really great character, and I love watching her just really try to support him through this, even when it seems like he's really, really difficult to support. So as a character study, I think it's fantastic. As a ghost movie, it's got its creepy moments, but it's just more of a mystery solving kind of thing. And I do love a solve a ghostly mystery kind of movie. This is one of my favorite examples that's ever been done for it. Number 11, Innocent Blood from 1992. This is one that a lot of people might think I'm way overrating, but I first saw this movie just within the past couple of years, and man, just when I feel like I've seen all the great vampire movies, Innocent Blood comes along, and it just blew me away. I thought it was so fantastic. One of the best vampire movies I've ever seen. It's about a female vampire who tries to be a good vampire and only kill bad guys, but when she tries to drink the blood of a ruthless mob boss, who's played by Robert Loggia, she accidentally doesn't finish the job, and he ends up going out as a vampire, kind of taking over the criminal underworld and turning people into vampires. And she has to team up with this cop, and they have to stop them. So it's kind of a romance between the two of them. It's kind of an action adventure as they stop this criminal stuff going on. But it still really satisfies as a horror movie, as a vampire movie. There's really good vampire content, really bloody vampire drinking sequences. In this movie, I mean, the vampires don't just prick your neck. I mean, they'll like rip your throat out to drink your blood. It is pretty awesome. I think the cast here is so good. I love the main actress. And it's actually directed by John Landis. He did an incredible job with the werewolf genre, obviously, but almost as good a job with vampires. Innocent Blood is awesome.
You know your shoelace is untied.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. This is my boomstick.
Army of Darkness.
Number 10, Army of Darkness from 1992. The third film in the Evil Dead series and the concluding chapter of the original trilogy. And it's such a classic today that I don't think a lot of people really think about what an insanely wild left turn this movie is for the series. Yes, the end of Evil Dead 2 sets this up, for sure. I realize that. But the first two are these cabin in the woods, grimy kind of demon horror movies. And Army of Darkness turns the series into like this sword and sorcery action adventure kind of thing. And my God, it works so perfectly. Like, I love this movie so much. The Evil Dead series as a whole are some of the few like 80s, 90s R-rated horror movies that my dad showed me when I was growing up. And we always really bonded over Army of Darkness especially. It really just captured our sense of humor, thinking it's so funny. One time he even took me to a repertory screening of it in a theater. And I've maybe never laughed harder in my life in a movie theater than watching Army of Darkness. It is so funny. Bruce Campbell is so incredibly good in it. He really just takes the character up to level 10 camp levels in such a great way. But the Deadites are still awesome. Watching him fight them is incredibly satisfying. He actually is such a badass here. That's what's so great about Ash as a character. Yeah, he's a joke. He's a buffoon. You're going to laugh at him a lot. But he also is a badass, and he's awesome to watch. There are very few characters that pull off that kind of thing. And to speak to the endings, I stand by the theatrical ending. I think it's like one of the greatest endings in cinematic history. Yes, I'll go ahead and say that. Man, Army of Darkness, what can I say? It's groovy. Number 9, The Exorcist III. From 1990. This, I have said many times on this channel to much controversy, is my favorite Exorcist movie. You see, with the original The Exorcist, I think it's a great movie, absolutely, but I've never had the experience of being scared by it. I first saw it as an adult, and while I can absolutely put my head back into the 70s and understand, wow, this is so much more extreme, blasphemous, uncomfortable than anything that had come before, and it's so groundbreaking. But I've never been scared by The Exorcist. But when I first saw The Exorcist III, I felt like it was one of the scariest movies I'd ever seen. This movie feels so overwhelmingly evil in every part of its bones. This is a demonic, vile kind of movie with an incredible lead performance at the center from George C. Scott as a detective who's trying to uncover a bunch of murders being done by a serial killer. And I really like this movie's story that it is about a demon possessing people in order to be a serial killer. I think that's kind of more interesting than when you get in a typical Exorcist kind of movie that feels like something a demon would absolutely do. So while the feeling of it is so creepy to me and so much of the religious imagery so unsettling, I just think the story is so interesting. I love George C. Scott in it so much. He's one of my favorite actors, and Brad Dourif gives an awesome supporting performance in here as well.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
Not scared, are you? Scream.
Number 8, Scream. From 1996. So Scream is about, you probably know what Scream is about. I would say unequivocally, this would be the most popular choice for number 1 of this decade. And it is definitely the most important horror film of the decade. It's the movie that really brought this genre back in a mainstream sense and was just such a massive hit when not many horror films were big hits during this period. But Scream is awesome. It's a little lower for me because there's just some movies that I like more. It's not quite like in my top 10 horror movies of all time or anything like that. But I do really enjoy this franchise. And for me, the first one is head and shoulders above the rest. I like a lot of the sequels, but Scream is the best. It is so well done by Wes Craven, so well written by Kevin Williamson. It's really good at delivering meta commentary without getting too obnoxious or cutesy about it, like a lot of movies since have definitely done. I love the cast. I love the really simplistic design of the ghost-faced killer, which actually ended up working out super well. It is so iconic. And I just love the way Ghostface moves, the way he runs around, trips, falls. He's like a really bad serial killer, but still pulls it off anyway. And it captures the Scooby-Doo mystery aspect of the franchise the best. No other third act reveal, killer reveal in the franchise has ever worked half as good as in the original Scream. It's awesome. Neve Campbell is one of the best final girls of all time, obviously. I love it, but there are some movies I like even more. Number 7, Candyman. From 1992. Man, I think this one should get almost as much credit as Scream for being such a bold, unique, and interesting take on the slasher genre. Tony Todd as Candyman really is one of the greatest slasher icons. He reminds me of a mix of Freddy Krueger and Dracula. Like, he's got that kind of supernatural slasher kind of thing, but also like he's beautiful and elegant and suave, and there's just something grand, ghostly, and operatic about him that makes him so compelling on screen. Like, when he shows up on screen, you don't know whether to be scared or just kind of in awe, like an angel has come before you. But he is scary. There are gruesome kill scenes in here. This is one of the most savage slasher movies of its decade, and I love the urban legend that they build around Candyman. If you say his name so many times in front of a mirror, he will appear to you. It just captures that kind of folklore aspect so well. Virginia Madsen, I think, does a good job in the lead. I don't think she's necessarily like one of the best final girls or anything like that, but she's solid. But it's really Tony Todd, the beautiful direction, the score, the interesting story that makes this one of the most just impressive horror films I've ever seen. Number 6, Tales from the Darkside, the movie from 1990. Man, I had such a hard time choosing between Candyman and Tales from the Darkside. I'm still not convinced I made the right choice, but I picked Tales from the Darkside over it because of how much I love horror anthologies. And this is my favorite horror anthology. For me, it's the most perfect anthology I've ever seen. It has a great wraparound, but all of the stories are awesome. Like, not just pretty good, but awesome, with a mummy story at the beginning and then a evil cat story that's got one of the craziest gore effects I've ever seen in my life. And then the third story, which is the biggest reason of how much I love this film, the greatest horror anthology segment of all time, Lover's Vow, which is like a beautiful romance tale that also has an insane looking gargoyle monster that's like one of my favorite practical effect creatures I've ever seen. And with such a man, the ending hits hard. That's all I'm saying without saying too much. Anthologies mean so much to me, and this one has always been my favorite. But cracking into the top 5, Ghostwatch from 1992. This is a made-for-TV movie that was actually made to seem like it's an actual non-fiction television program. It's a British film, and it used actual BBC newscasters and media personalities to populate the film about some news people that go into a haunted house on Halloween to investigate if it is actually haunted. And wouldn't you know it, it turns out to be haunted. Now, this is another one I only discovered within the past couple of years, and it has shot up to like being one of my favorite movies of all time, mostly because of how incredibly scary it is. Like, this movie terrified me when I first watched it. And I'm like an adult grown man just watching this in my living room. And I thought this was so scary, just sent chills down my spine. I love found footage, especially in like the mockumentary format. This one does that really well. It feels incredibly real. The haunting things like don't even seem that unrealistic. So it makes you feel like this stuff is really happening. There's this one scene that stands out to me so much. It's one of the scariest things I've ever seen, where they're opening a door and they have strong reason to believe that there might be a ghost on the other side, and they're just opening it so slowly. And I'm not gonna say anything else about where it goes, but like, it's one of the best examples of like suggestion in your audience and making you feel like, man, it's incredibly well done. That's all I'm going to say. Ghostwatch, for me personally, and this is super subjective, guys, is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, and I think it's immaculately well done. And the behind-the-scenes stories of people seeing it on TV, thinking it was real, freaking out, calling the TV channel to complain, some real-life consequences because of it. It's some of the most interesting real-life stories about a horror movie I've ever heard. Number 4. The Silence of the Lambs from 1991. So this is one that I actually saw for the first time back in high school. Really liked it. It was actually another one that was really built up for me by my parents. And as a kid, I was actually really scared of cannibals because my dad described a lot of this movie to me. But when I finally saw it, thought it was great, but I didn't rewatch it since then. So like for my whole adult life, I'd only seen it once back in high school, didn't even remember it that well. And I just rewatched it for the first time leading up to make this list. And Silence of the Lambs just really is that incredible. Like, what am I going to say? It has earned its reputation in every way. It's, I think, the most Oscar-winning horror film ever made. It deserves all of it. Everything about how it's done is immaculately perfect. Like, it is an incredibly intense, but deeply fascinating and legitimately fun to watch serial killer crime thriller as Jodie Foster as such a sympathetic lead character. And she plays this character like so understated, but you just get to like her so much, feel for her. She's such an underdog in like every sequence for different reasons. You're always rooting for her. And as she like interviews Hannibal Lecter, I mean, Anthony Hopkins in this role, what can you say? Like, I just think it's one of the best performances of all time. The relationship between them fascinates me. And then the Buffalo Bill stuff with Ted Levine is some of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. Like, Buffalo Bill is so disturbing to me. I can't even tell you how much. It's one of those movies that, yeah, it's sick, twisted, disturbing, but it's a blast. Like, it's so much fun to watch. Every scene is awesome. It actually has a really great autumnal atmosphere to it that I really love. And the third act is like one of the most intense third acts ever. Like, it is so scary. It's so tense. It is such a house of horrors kind of sequence. You know, if anybody said this was the best horror film of the 90s, I would not disagree. Not for a second. You would hear no arguments from me. But man, my top 3 are such personal favorites. So let's get into that. At number 3, Sleepy Hollow from 1999. The original story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, is my favorite short story of all time and just one of my favorite stories ever told. There is the greatest, coolest ghost of of all time, the Headless Horseman, who is even played by Christopher Walken in the segments when he actually has a head. That's just like so weird and random, but fantastic. I love to see Christopher Walken here. At number 2, In the Mouth of Madness from 1994. John Carpenter is my favorite director of all time, and this is one of my top favorites of his movies. This is one of the best Lovecraftian cosmic horror films ever. It does pay great homage to Stephen King, with it being about an author, Sutter Kane, a mystique and a mystery around him, as Sam Neill is an insurance investigator who goes into this very spooky small town. This movie's got some of the best spooky small town atmosphere of all time to try to investigate this author and if his stories are coming to life. But it's really got a good cosmic feel to it. Very good homaging to H.P. Lovecraft. It's got awesome special effects. It is so creative. I love Sam Neill. He's always been like one of my favorite actors, and I think he's so great in the lead here. I just think this movie is so interesting, so much fun, and I really think it's one of John Carpenter's best efforts.
I have crossed oceans of time to find you, Dracula.
But my number 1 is Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Longtime viewers of this channel are probably not surprised at all, but some other folks might be appalled because I am well aware a lot of people don't like this movie. A lot of people don't love it nearly as much as me. But for me, Dracula is my favorite story ever told. Dracula is my favorite fictional character ever created. And this is my favorite Dracula movie. Even though it's not perfectly faithful to the book, though it is one of the more faithful adaptations for sure, it so well captures Dracula as not just a vampire, but this like god of evil, this true prince of darkness that has almost unlimited supernatural power. Director Francis Ford Coppola got super creative with this movie. He had the idea to make the very physics of reality seem to change around Dracula, and it just makes him feel so otherworldly, so powerful. The special effects in here are also all in camera, so it's visually incredibly creative, jaw-droppingly beautiful. Gothic atmosphere has almost never been done this well. Dracula takes multiple forms like a bat monster, a wolf monster. And there's an argument to be made that he's not even the scariest vampire in the movie, but it is a certain female vampire, one of the creepiest vampire scenes ever put to screen. Now, is everything about the movie perfect? No. Keanu Reeves isn't the best. In fact, you could say he's terrible in it. He probably is. But for me, I just love this movie so much. And I just love Keanu Reeves so much, like as an actor, as a person. He just seems like a great dude that I'm always happy to watch Keanu Reeves on screen. I don't even need him to be great all the time. So he's even become something that I enjoy about this film. There's just no doubt in my mind that even though it's not for most people, it is my favorite horror movie of the 90s. Before I go, I just want to give a massive thank you to my patrons for making this channel possible. Thank you guys so much for supporting me, and if anybody else wants to, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. And I want to give a special shout out today to Thomas Walter, Casey Telemake, and Jeremy Stacy. You guys are the absolute best. But what are your favorite horror movies of the 90s? Please let me know down in the comments below. And if you want to give me your whole top 30, that would be awesome. I would love to read it. If you want to hang out with me more, you can click on this video right over here. Those are my top horror movies of the 80s, or this playlist for this whole series starting in the 1930s. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to enjoy yourselves today. Have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.